My daughter-in-law smiled and said, "My whole family is coming over for Thanksgiving, around 40 people." My son added, "Dad, could you sleep in the garage for a few days? My wife's parents should have the master bedroom." That morning, I took a sip of my coffee and replied, "Perfect. I'll be on vacation for Thanksgiving. The two of you can cook, clean, and entertain your own guests. I'm not your servant." Their smiles disappeared instantly, because they had no idea I'd already prepared a surprise they would never be able to swallow. My name is Walter Calloway. I'm 60 years old, a retired history teacher with 35 years in the classroom, and I live in a 4-bedroom house on the quiet outskirts of Los Angeles. I say I live alone, but that's not quite true. I live with the memory of Margaret. She planted every rose bush along our fence, picked the warm gold shutters everyone else calls yellow, built the garden beds herself. When she passed 4 years ago, I kept everything exactly as she left it. My neighbor Dave started coming by for coffee not long after. Never announced, just showed up at the fence one Sunday and said I looked like I needed company more than I needed to ask for it. That house was my peace. Then, one Thursday evening in October of 2022, my son Mason knocked on my door with his wife Brianna beside him, and a rented moving truck idling at the curb. Mason is 33, works logistics for a distribution company downtown. He has my jaw and his mother's eyes, and for a long time I believed he had her heart too. Brianna is 30, sharp-featured, perpetually filming herself for what she calls her lifestyle brand. She'd packed 2 ring lights before she packed a single plate. "Our landlord raised the rent again," Mason said, hands white-knuckled on his bag strap. "We just need 6 months, Dad. 6 months to get our finances right, and then we're gone." I wanted to say no. 35 years of reading students had taught me exactly what a shaky promise sounds like, but he looked so much like Margaret in that moment that something in my chest simply gave way. "6 months?" I said. Brianna smiled, bright and practiced. "You won't even know we're here." That sentence should have been my warning. People who intend to be respectful don't usually feel the need to promise it in advance. The first 2 months were manageable. Then month 3 arrived, and Brianna started sleeping until 11, drifting into the kitchen to pour coffee from a pot she never made, complaining the Wi-Fi was slow while she uploaded content. One Sunday, Dave watched the house over his coffee cup and asked how long they were planning on staying. 6 months, I said. He just said, "Uh-huh," in the tone of a man who didn't believe it for a second. Neither, deep down, did I. 6 months became 9. On a cold morning in the fall of 2023, I found a bank statement on the counter that made my hands shake. A large, unauthorized withdrawal from my quiet years fund, the money I'd spent decades building, so I'd never have to ask anyone for anything. I sat at that table a long time. The dry, hollow ache of a man discovering someone he loves chose to steal from him anyway. 3 days later, the answer pulled into my driveway on 4 brand-new tires, a jet-black luxury SUV, $80,000, gleaming in the sun. Brianna shrieked and threw her arms around Mason. I asked him plainly what it was. "Work bonus, Dad." "I earned it," he said, without blinking, the smooth, rehearsed delivery I recognized instantly, from 35 years of catching kids in lies. That night, I lined up the withdrawal date against a financing brochure he'd left on the counter. The numbers matched with the precision of a confession. I called my attorney, Phil Hartman. I thought about the police. I couldn't do that to my son. "How do I do this legally?" I asked. Under California law, since they'd lived there over a year, I needed to serve a 60-day written notice before I could begin removal proceedings. "Not yet," I told Phil. I looked at the calendar. Thanksgiving was 10 weeks away. "I'll tell you when." Phil sent the notice on October 3rd. Certified mail, signature required. Mason signed for it himself on a Tuesday morning, which meant the clock now ran to December 2nd. He never told Brianna, not that week, not the next. He tucked the letter away and kept living in my house like the ground beneath him was solid. I watched him make that choice every single day, and every day it told me something new about the man my son had become. By the 3rd week of November, Brianna had worked herself into a full Thanksgiving frenzy, teasing her followers online about the biggest gathering yet, without asking me a single thing. 4 days before the holiday, she dropped a shopping list on my kitchen table without so much as a hello. 2 turkeys from a specific butcher, imported cheeses, specialty wines, ribbon colors for napkin rings. I need this done by tomorrow, she said, the way people talk to staff. I read the list twice, set it down, and looked at her. You invited them. You planned this. You do the shopping. Her face cycled through shock, outrage, and then cold calculation. Mason, she snapped. He appeared in the doorway, already hollow-eyed. Come on, Dad, he said. It's just groceries. That phrase, as if it had ever been about groceries. I picked up my coffee and walked out without another word. Behind me, I heard Brianna tell him, he'll cave, he always does. I went straight to my desk and called the bank. The supplementary card I'd given Mason 18 months earlier, the one Brianna used for nail salons and designer shoes, was deactivated before I hung up. The list sat untouched on the table overnight. By the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, every grocery store in Los Angeles had already been stripped bare by families who'd planned weeks ahead. That night, Mason knocked on my door and asked, eyes on the baseboard, if I'd mind taking the basement so Brianna's parents could have the master. I said nothing. I went to bed. In the morning, I made one more phone call. Brianna woke certain she'd already won. She'd take the card, buy everything herself, prove she didn't need my help. She swept out the door in sunglasses and perfume, calling over her shoulder that apparently asking for help around here was too much. I sat with my coffee and let the quiet settle. I know exactly how that Whole Foods trip went, because I've spent 35 years learning to read a room. 2 overflowing carts, no glance at a single price tag, because she never believed she'd be the one paying. At the register, the total came back staggering. She handed over the card with the smooth confidence of someone who'd never once been told no by a piece of plastic. The terminal beeped. Declined. She had it run again. Declined again. She called Mason, hissing through clenched teeth to fix it. I checked my account this morning, he said. I don't have enough. The lease cleared, the insurance. I don't care, she snapped. That's when a woman 2 people back in line lit up. Oh my gosh. Are you Bry Lives Large? I love your content. The blood left Brianna's face. She mumbled something about leaving most of the order, paid for 4 bags out of 2 full carts, and drove home in silence. When she walked in, her eyes were red, her voice stripped of every performance she usually wore. You did that on purpose, she said. I deactivated the card, I told her. I'm allowed to. She went upstairs. Through the ceiling, I heard her door close, and then the sound of her actually crying. Not the performance tears, the kind that come when the plan has failed and there's no audience left. I looked out at Margaret's roses, their last blooms hanging on the canes, and thought about 40 people arriving in under 48 hours to an empty refrigerator. Mason left at 5 the next morning, engine rumbling down the driveway. I made coffee and sat in Margaret's chair, and by 8:30 he was back, empty-handed, shoulders caved. Costco's cleaned out. Walmart, same. Ralph's had nothing. Trader Joe's isn't even open, he said, forehead against the counter. Brianna flew in behind him, half her hair still in pins. 40 people are coming in 2 hours, and there's nothing? That's when I walked in with my travel bag. 3 days of clothes, my medications, the small framed photo of Margaret I always bring. Brianna's eyes locked onto it like a heat-seeking device. What is that bag for? I'm heading out, I said. My friend Bill has a cabin near Ojai. I finally said yes. The color drained from her face. You cannot walk out that door today. I looked at her steadily. You invited them. You planned this. You told Mason to put me in the garage so your parents could have my room. So I'm giving you the whole house. You're welcome to it. Mason's voice cracked wide open. Dad, please. I don't know what to do. I put my hand on his shoulder. You're a grown man, Mason. Figure it out. I walked out the front door to the car already waiting at the curb, and I didn't look back. Somewhere on the 101 heading north, my phone buzzed with a security camera notification. I'd had those cameras installed years earlier and had never once mentioned them to Mason or Brianna. I pulled into a gas station and watched, in silence, as rental cars and overpacked SUVs crowded my street. 40 people, right on schedule. Brianna answered the door in a blouse clearly chosen for the moment. waving with a smile stretched tight enough to look painful. Brianna's father, Richard, stepped out in a sport coat, surveyed the house, and declared it a proper home. Her mother, Carol, eyed the roses and murmured they could use some attention. 12 minutes in, Mason gathered everyone at the garage for the big reveal of the SUV. He pressed the fob. The lights flashed once. He climbed in, turned the key. Nothing. Again, nothing. A battery left dead for weeks doesn't forgive neglect. 14 relatives stood in a semicircle, watching him try a third time, their faces sliding from anticipation into open amusement. Someone's uncle called out that his '98 Civic started every time and cost $4,000. Laughter rippled through the driveway. Brianna steered Mason back toward the house, announcing brightly that dinner was almost ready. There was no dinner. There were 4 bags of groceries and a Wi-Fi password only I knew. My phone buzzed. Mason, begging for the password, said the kids were asking, and Brianna was losing it. I turned the phone face down and kept driving. The mountains outside Ojai were turning gold, and for the first time in 2 years, the air in my lungs felt clean. At 3:17 that afternoon, sitting on Bill's porch with a cooling cup of coffee, my phone rang. Brianna. I let it ring twice before answering. You did this on purpose, she said, voice shredded with fury and humiliation. You ruined my Thanksgiving. You ruined everything. Did I invite them? I asked, calm and unhurried. Did I agree to cook, to pay, to sleep in the garage so your parents could take my room? That is not the point, she said. That is exactly the point, I said. I gave you 2 years, no rent, every bill paid. Today is the first time you've had to follow through on something you promised other people. Don't put that on me. I heard the room shift behind her. A murmur. Then Mason's uncle. She told us this house was practically theirs. An aunt. She said her father-in-law was happy to host. And then Richard's voice, quiet and devastating. Brianna, look me in the eye and tell me whose house this actually is. Silence. She had nothing left to say. Your guests, I told her. Your responsibility. I'm on vacation. I hung up, picked my coffee back up off the railing, and watched the last light leave the hills. I drove back to Los Angeles on the 30th. Turning onto my street, I saw the moving truck first, a white rental backed up to the garage. Mason was carrying a box down the driveway when he saw my car. He stopped, and I could see he hadn't slept in days. Dad, he said, and there was nothing rehearsed left in it. I sold the car. Private sale. Enough to pay you back part of what I took, and enough for a deposit on an apartment in Burbank. It's small. 3rd floor, no working elevator. Brianna cried when she saw it. He paused. I know I don't deserve another chance. I'm not asking for one. I just needed you to know I know what I took from you. I'm sorry, Dad. I know you are, I said, and put my hand on his shoulder. This time he didn't flinch. Inside, the house was quiet. Scuffed, a little worn, but mine again. Dave came to the fence with 2 coffees within 10 minutes. They gone? He asked. Almost, I said. Brianna came down the porch steps with a duffel bag and eyes swollen from crying, and didn't look at me once. She climbed into the truck, pressed her forehead to the window. Mason lifted a hand from the curb. I lifted mine back. Then they were gone. That evening I roasted the turkey breast I'd been saving, the way Margaret used to, windows open to let the December air move through the house. I set one place at the table and ate in peace. Later I sat in Margaret's chair on the porch with a small pot of decaf, listening to the neighborhood settle, a dog barking twice, the last leaves moving through the garden. The roses were past their season, but the canes were healthy. They'd come back in spring. Everything that's supposed to come back always does, eventually. People sometimes ask if I regret any of it. I don't. Not for a single day. I gave my son every chance a father could give. Time, money, patience, a roof over his head. What I should have given him sooner was a consequence. Don't wait 2 years hoping people will choose to do right on their own. Kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's an open invitation. I learned that the hard way, and I hope you don't have to. The moment I stopped carrying their life for them, I finally got mine back.